show where we tell you about the politics and the policy and those issues that are affecting you and me on a daily basis. And what's top of mind right now is the Russian bear invading through the sunflower fields of the Ukraine. Remember, Ukraine is famous for sunflowers and exports. And while this is a distant conflict for most Indians, barring the 18,000 odd Indians who are currently stuck in the Ukraine, the consequences of this aggression are mostly economic for India. We are not directly involved in the conflict. We have trade with both countries. Russia is a significant trading partner from the past with India, but over the last few decades, there are other partners who have superseded Russia. The current year has seen trade of around $9.5 billion, with 70% and above of that being imports from Russia into India. And what do we sell to Russia? A lot of products, including tea, which is something that we all know about. How will this get impacted? How will trade with the Ukraine get impacted? The volume of trade with the Ukraine is not that significant, but there is very clearly a second round effect that will happen on the Indo-Russian trade front. And there are two clear possibilities here. The first, as Russia comes under Western power sanctions, the ability of its banks and its overall financial system to transact with third parties outside of Russia is likely to be severely impacted. Indian traders are one of those third parties. When an Indian trader exports, he has to wait for that payment. And with sanctions, that entire mix could get complicated as far as Indian traders are concerned. Not only could it lead to delays, there could well be cancellations as well. The second aspect is inbound imports into India from Russia. Several kinds of goods, particularly military goods, defense equipment, is definitely going to come under sanctions. And you would recall that in the run-up to this conflict, even before this, over the last 2-3 years, including when Donald Trump was the president of the United States of America, India was having some trouble in navigating through US sanctions on Russia with regard to a sophisticated missile defense system. We have already received some units of the S-400, as it is called, and this is high technology which is not available. And the Russians have given it to us. There are other defense deals. All of this gets impacted. How will we be able to navigate through this? Will exceptions be possible? Because unlike the previous round of US sanctions and the invocation of a particular act of the US government, which caused us considerable difficulty when it came to items like the S-400, for example, this time there is global outrage against Russia. Russia is seen as being an unilateral actor, which is now destabilizing not just Europe, but potentially the global economy. The economic impact really, as far as the markets over the last 24 to 36 hours, has seen quite a bit of a swing practically as far as the Indian stock markets are concerned. Yesterday, a historical fall. Today, a very, very sharp and smart recovery, perhaps on account of the fact that the market is realizing that this is not becoming a broader based conflict. In simpler words, that no third party is getting involved in this fight between Russia and Ukraine. And what is happening on the ground in the Ukraine, whatever news reports, visuals that are coming out, is painting a certain kind of picture. But the real impact, like I said, for India will be the medium and long term consequences on the trade and economic front. In all of this, there is a very significant humanitarian angle as well, and we shouldn't forget the Indian diaspora is one of the largest diasporas from any country in the world. Obviously, it is a percentage and a proportion of India's massive population, second only to China's, and perhaps very soon to be the number one country as far as population is concerned. Obviously, it's not just the high tech Indian, the IITian who goes overseas. India is one of the largest contributors to the global uh, human capital, which powers the services sector globally. In the former Soviet republics and countries like the one that we are talking about, Ukraine, there is a significant number of students. And as we've all discovered, all of a sudden, Ukraine is not a country which usually is in the headlines as far as the Indian media is concerned. You have suddenly seen and are now focusing on this very significant number of students, 18,000 students. And I heard someone say, oh, what are these students doing there? Well, it's the lack of higher education opportunities, particularly in medicine, that lead many Indians every year to countries like the Ukraine. And now the government of India has decided to begin special flights. Romania and Hungary will be the two countries which will be the entrepôts for Indians, including the students who want to come back to India, and the government of India is going to bear that cost. So, the immediate humanitarian travel logistics aspects apart, the longer term impact is trade. How do we find reliable replacements for certain critical defense equipment and defense platforms, complex, sophisticated, extremely essential defense products? Who is going to supply it to us? Is the United States going to give us those similar platforms? Experience has shown us that while there is a lot of bonhomie in some ways between India and the United States, it has not necessarily translated into concrete transactions. Our most recent and largest purchase of defense equipment, which is the Rafale aircraft, is with a European country, with France. The missile defense system is from Russia, frigates with Russia. A lot of our high-tech equipment, a lot of our battlefield communication capability enhancement, a lot of the electronics and intelligence-related apparatus that is being used by India, a lot of those are items that aren't spoken about publicly. Israel is one of the significant suppliers that has emerged. So, with the United States, because of the certain conditionalities that get attached when it comes to defense procurement with the United States, and certain kinds of, I would say, ideological overhangs that still persist, the United States is not yet seen as a as a premium gold standard, platinum standard, call whatever whichever way you want to describe it, in terms of being a replacement, durable, effective, and a trustworthy replacement for Russian equipment. There is, of course, this legacy equipment, and it can't be switched overnight due to the cost and the time it will be taken. So that's the broader long-term worry. And the final point, in the run-up to this conflict, there was talk about US sanctions and how US sanctions, along with other countries, including Germany, which, for example, has also issued a very stern warning to Russia, what would be the impact of those sanctions? And we have seen, history has taught us that sanctions have some impact, but a limited impact, because a country of the size, scale, economic, and strategic importance as Russia would have perhaps thought through alternative scenarios, because they went into this conflict with open eyes. In fact, one would say absolutely naked aggression. So, for a country like India, to summarize, There is no direct involvement with the conflict. There is, of course, this need to get our countrymen back into India so that their lives can be safe, but the consequences are economic. And the trade and economic impact is something that we will have to see how it pans out. So far, everyone is putting up a brave front, but I would say that this will hasten the process of India on a medium long term continuing to now find different suppliers. The era of 100% dependence on the USSR and Russia actually got over perhaps 2 decades ago, if not more. But the replacement of Russia with a similar all weather friend, especially on the defense equipment side, hasn't happened. What India has done is to have a diversified set of suppliers, nations, and partnerships that I just told you about. So I feel that the longer term lasting impact of this conflict will be that India will now realize that Atmanirbharta, when it comes to defense equipment, upgrades, modern defense technology has to be found in India. I remember that the Modi government, in its first outing, had decided to champion something called the strategic partnership model, where it wanted individual Indian companies to tie up with foreign partners, strategic partners, and build complex defense systems which are multi decade investments. That really didn't take off. And I think this latest episode puts pressure in some ways on the government and the strategic establishment within India to take a call on that and figure out what is now relevant in 2022 and beyond. And one final consequence, our greatest threat comes on the border from China. The annexation of Tibet, which happened many decades back, is now showing consequences in the strategic dimension. And for us on the diplomatic front, the bigger challenge will be uh, China and continuing to tackle and resist its aggressive tactics, its salami slicing, occupationary political ideology, and we'll have to be continuously on the guard and ramp up investments on that front. So that's what, at this stage, on day two of the Russian Ukrainian conflict, is what we can see and foretell for India at this stage. And finally, uh, a prayer for the well being and safety of every fellow Indian who's caught in this war zone. And we are hoping that the government of India, which is already putting together a rapid evacuation plan, succeeds to do it and do it very, very fast and bring out every single Indian back to the motherland safely. You take care. Goodbye, and I'll see you very soon once again. Till then, make sure that you continue to subscribe and stay logged in on Business Today.